Today, I'm speaking with Chris Spags, a software developer and the founder of JetBoost. I was involved in a project with Chris a few years back and recently found out that he's just sold JetBoost, which is a very popular suite of tools in the Webflow ecosystem. So I thought it'd be really interesting and a great time to get him on to talk about his journey with that company and what it's like building within an established ecosystem and how Webflow has grown over the years. We also spoke about the process of selling a software business, which is something I know very little about, and what it's like now after a successful sale and the kind of journey of finding a new direction. As always, if you appreciate the show, leave a rating wherever you're listening or share it with someone. And now I hope you enjoy this interview with Chris Spags. So Chris, I'd love to start with a kind of overview of Webflow. Firstly, for people who've not really dug into it that much, but also more generally, like set the stage for your work, which was, and we'll get to that, as a kind of developer and entrepreneur making products for that ecosystem. So I guess the question would be, what is Webflow today, like the platform and all of the things that it is? And then we could go back to kind of what Webflow was when you started building, because I believe you were like one of the earliest people to build for that platform. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, Webflow is a visual website builder. I often compare it to Squarespace or Wix, only a much more powerful tool. So it's got a visual editor where you can design and build websites. It's also got built-in CMS. Over the years, they've added a number of different features, user management. Now they're doing like A/B testing optimization built in. They've started to layer AI into the tool. So definitely it's grown into a very powerful tool that's used by professional designers, website builders, marketers, mostly to do, I would say, marketing websites, but also there are people who build more application like websites on top of Webflow as well.
Yeah, that's a quick tangent there, actually. Like, how much of that have you seen? What is there? Like, obviously, I work at Glide, and that's very much like tools-based internal applications, sort of like functional stuff, as opposed to front-end websites. Like, how close is Webflow getting? I know they have some kind of version of their own like automation or workflow builder. How close do people get beyond the kind of like prototypes of things like, like Sarkis did the PlayStation, like, and things
Yeah,
like that?
yeah. I think both Webflow and the community have actually pulled back a little bit from the application side. Webflow had the workflow feature that you mentioned that they've kind of sunset. So
Really, I didn't know that.
yeah, they called it Logic. That's been sunset, and they recommend using a different tool like Zapier or Make to do some of that. But I think, 4 or 5 years ago when no code was kind of first coming onto the scene, people were experimenting a lot more with what types of applications can I build in Webflow and pulling in other tools. I think Webflow's found their sweet spot, like I said, as a marketing website builder with their extremely powerful CMS and as a tool for marketing teams and for designers. They're really focused on being performant for websites, being best in class SEO. So I think that's where they found their best customers and their fit in the market.
It's interesting. I remember, like, I mean, every product does this. Like, you have visions about where you're going to go and what you're going to tackle, and then you pivot. Like Notion, I believe, or like I can't remember. This is from someone else uh, who said this, but like, their idea in the beginning was to let anyone build software. Like, it was quite loose. I don't know whether that's true or not. Just for
That,
the
that,
record.
that was Notion, yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Webflow as well. Like I remember like listening to those really early talks with Vlad at various different conferences, and like he was so key to the no code movement's vision. Um, and then like a business has to just do what a business has to do eventually. And I don't want that to
Right.
sound cynical, but it's kind of interesting because I was like fully bought in. I fully was like, that's where Webflow is going. You're going to be able to build anything. So really interesting to hear that. Do you know about anything about that decision about the workflow builder or whatever you called it, logic? Like,
Yeah, I don't have too much insight into the internal decision making there other than uh, it seemed to be one of those initiatives where you get into it and it turns out to be a much bigger thing than maybe you anticipated. And uh, as soon as you get something in the hands of customers, then they want more, or
Like
to take
almost a
things in
whole
a
different
different
product, isn't
direction.
it? Really. Like
Exactly.
we just launched in the last year, like workflows at Glide, and it's just in its earliest stage, and yet it's
Yeah.
incredibly sophisticated. And now we need to move on to other things because of, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a real tangent. Um, so that's kind of, you give us a good overview of it now, but like, yeah, let's jump back to the earliest days when you started. Am I right that like when you started, maybe you can give a brief origin story of JetBoost and how like that started, I guess, with Corey, and what it was like developing back then. Were you one of the earliest?
Yeah, I think so. MemberStack was definitely around and established in the Webflow community then. So, for those who aren't familiar, MemberStack allows you to build like membership websites on top of Webflow and other tools. So they handle all the user logins, authentication. They connect to Stripe, do billing, let you set up different plans and gate content for members that are on different plans. So they were a very popular tool that was doing a lot of things well in the Webflow ecosystem. The very early, it was maybe them and a handful of others. So I took a lot of inspiration from them with JetBoost. Um, and yeah, the origin of JetBoost was let's see, in 2019, I had never even heard of Webflow yet. And I believe Webflow launched. They went through YC maybe in 2013, so they had a long road. Um, but a friend of mine, Corey Haynes, he was a marketer at Baremetrics at the time, head of marketing. He was also launching a lot of his own stuff, and he built a job board using Webflow. Um, he built it in like a weekend. He connected a bunch of other tools, Zapier, Typeform. He integrated billing through Stripe, and within like a week, he was making money off of this job board. It looked amazing. It functioned well, and I was just like blown away because the website builders I'd seen in the past weren't all that great. And here's someone who's never written a line of code in their life and had built this fully functioning product essentially that was bringing in real revenue, was making more than any of the any of the products that I was working on at the time because I was also trying to launch my own things. So I immediately was like, I need to check out this new tool, Webflow. Like, I need to dive into this and see what is it capable of. Um, is this, that's when I started hearing about no code. Like, is this the future? What value can I add as someone who is a software developer? Um, and eventually I ended up helping Corey out with adding like a search function to his job board because there was no way to search through the list of jobs. You could just kind of scroll through them. And so I added just some simple JavaScript code to his website that allowed you to search by like location of the job or the job title, position, and was just helping him out. Didn't really think much of it. Over the next 6 months, he just kept sending me more and more people, just referring them to me. Hey, so and so came across my website. They're also using Webflow. They also have some sort of list of whether it's jobs or blog posts or any other type of content, and they want to add search to it as well. Webflow didn't have that built in. They had a site wide search, but not just hey, I've got a single list, a collection list as Webflow calls it, of data, and I want to add search right on that page. So I did a couple more of those. Again, just like custom coding each site, writing the JavaScript required for it. And after a few of them, I was like, okay, maybe I can somehow turn this into a product that any Webflow user can install without having to write all this custom code themselves. Because one of the things about Webflow that was very true then, and I think still to this day, is most of their users are not developers. They don't write code. So that was a bit of a hurdle for people to overcome. And eventually, after uh, tinkering around with the Webflow API, which was pretty limited at the time, I was able to come up with a way that would allow anyone to take basically add this search feature to their own Webflow site, without having to write code. Built like a visual workflow that they could step through and use to install this feature on their site. That became the first version of JetBoost.
Right. And yeah, I want to ask you about the API as well and the stuff that you're seeing today. But like maybe you could give people a catch up on what JetBoost is today, because it's not just like that simple functionality. We'll talk about like growing the business and other aspects about that, but purely from a product point of view, like what can it do today? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So today, JetBoost is essentially a suite of different plugins and tools for Webflow that enhance the Webflow CMS. So this allows uh, freelancers or agencies who are building sites for clients, or just people that are working on their internal marketing sites, to add things like search, complex filtering to content pages. We've also have a Mapbox integration. So anyone who wants to set up like a store locator functionality, or if you have a list of, say you have offices all over the world and you want to show on a map where those offices are located, JetBoost makes that super easy just by using the plugin that we provide. I say we like like I'm still a part of it, but yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
for context at this point in the interview. Yeah, Chris has moved on and sold JetBoost, but we'll talk about that hopefully. Um, So yeah, the thing that I'm really interested in, and is a whole topic for a developer and entrepreneur like yourself, when you're building within an ecosystem for a larger product, so to speak, is like how your feature set relates to the feature set of the current product, and then really importantly how it's evolving. Um,
yeah,
so what features have eventually ended up being created by Webflow to be a native thing? Like, I don't know that, in the early days, you added value by certain things that weren't there. Have Webflow encroached on that? Um, did you ever talk to them about that? Like, what was that relationship like? I'm just interested from your perspective.
yeah. I think building on a platform, people always talk about platform risk when you do that. And it's true, there is risk. I think the platform matters, and the relationship you can build with people at the platform company matters as well. So that was something I focused on a lot with JetBoost as it was starting to grow and get traction and become known in the Webflow community, was trying to build relationships with people at Webflow to understand, if not their exact roadmap, like how are they thinking about these third-party tools like a MemberStack or like a JetBoost? Is this something, in the very beginning when I launched it, I wasn't sure if Webflow would even be okay with it, if this was going to be, I don't know, offensive in some way of like, hey, I'm building these things that you don't provide. But as I started to meet more people there, I learned how much they were embracing that as something that was helpful for them and for their customers, because they didn't have a great solution for the problems that JetBoost was solving. And so, I learned that even in their support team would recommend JetBoost to customers that were trying to do some of the things that JetBoost solved. Um, so yeah, trying to, there was always that risk of Webflow building some of these things natively. To this day, it actually hasn't happened yet for any of the JetBoost plugins or features. Now, there are some changes that have happened that I think made me, when I was running the business, a bit nervous. One of the big ones was, so JetBoost, at the time, like I said, the API was rather limited, so I had to build an entire UI and interface that you would use to install JetBoost through the JetBoost website. Today, Webflow allows you to build apps that function directly inside of the Webflow designer. So that was a big challenge for me, because it meant taking, by that time, maybe 4 years of product development and workflows that we had developed to make the process as smooth as possible, and question, do we redo all of that now as what's, you could call a more native Webflow app inside of their builder? Um, So yeah, when you're building on a platform, like you're always having to react to changes and new directions. The Webflow logic is a great example. There were Had they continued to go down that route, they would have started to cannibalize some of the JetBoost features. Not necessarily one to one, but making it possible for individual users to build similar functionality themselves. Um, but you just you kind of have to play the cards you're dealt, and like I said, react the best that you can. And um, so for me, while I was running JetBoost, I made the decision that we're going to keep going down the route we've gone of we have our own custom workflows. Would it be better inside of the Webflow designer? Uh, Maybe, but would it be 10 times better, or for the amount of cost that it's going to take to redo all of this? It didn't seem worth it to me.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So, um, maybe I've missed something of what you said there. So, what is JetBoost today? Is not an app, or it is an app? Um,
Yeah, it's technically still considered a Webflow app. It's just uh, I guess there are there are two. Or let me take a step back. So in 2022, so this was 3 years after JetBoost was around, Webflow launched the official app marketplace. And originally, this was just a listing of apps that integrated with Webflow. So essentially anything like Zapier, JetBoost, MemberStack. They were all kind of their own third-party thing that happened to have an integration with Webflow. And that was the first version of their marketplace. About a year later, they kind of relaunched the marketplace with this new concept of built-in Webflow apps. Um, JetBoost is not that, but it is still listed as a Webflow app because it still integrates, tightly with Webflow. It's just the UI is outside of Webflow itself, if
right.
that
So,
makes
does
sense.
built-in mean like you use it in the builder?
Correct, correct.
Right. Okay. Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just interested. You presumably kept tabs on the marketplace of apps that have evolved. Like, what does it look like today? What are some of the most impressive ones that you've seen? Like, yeah, I'm just interested.
Yeah, I think the the two categories I've seen start to grow a lot inside of, especially with the Webflow native apps, are just things that speed up or improve designers' workflows. So things like custom icon sets or adding unsplash images directly, being able to just like search and then fill out an image from there directly inside the designer. So um, there's another one that is basically a better interface for building shadows on elements than what's in like the native Webflow designer. So kind of all these little designer tools. Um,
Do you think
I,
it's
I
still really viable to like build a business as an app creator for Webflow now?
I
Maybe
think
it's a
it's
hard question. Maybe a
I
bit
think
vague.
it's challenging to do it in the manner that JetBoost did, which was this is only for Webflow. This is only solving problems in the Webflow space. I think it can be building a Webflow app can be great if you are either multi-platform. So maybe it's something that also works with WordPress and, like I said, Squarespace and Wix and these other tools. Webflow can be another great distribution channel. Um, yeah. The only other ones I've seen are more on the e-commerce side, and it's tricky because there are a lot of gaps to fill there with Webflow e-commerce, but at the same time, most e-commerce companies aren't choosing Webflow.
So I guess I have a question about like scaling it up or the journey that you've been on with it, having now sold it. Like how large did it get? Was it always just you? Did you bring on other people? Um, and just generally scaling up a business of that side to then sell it. Like any learnings or reflections on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So about the first 2 years were just me. Uh, One of the big lessons was I would definitely hire sooner. I think every first time founder goes through that of like just trying to make the first hire. And then once I had a couple starts and stops, a couple misses. And then once you find somebody who's really good, you're like, oh, wow, this person has skills in areas that I'm not that great at. So one example is I worked with a designer to build like template websites that were using JetBoost that we just gave away for free. So if somebody wanted to start a job board using Webflow, here we've got 2 different job board templates that are already hooked up to JetBoost that you can just copy, or clone, as they say in Webflow, into your own account and basically just start using it. And for for the first year I did a couple of these templates myself, and they were terrible. Like, I'm not a designer. They were not good. And as soon as I found somebody to work with that was able to produce these, I was just like blown away of why didn't I do this sooner. Same thing with customer support. I eventually hired someone to do that, initially part-time, and then he eventually came on full-time and stayed with me through the entire journey of the company. And he was just like an amazing unlock for me, as far as now I'm not spending all day being interrupted by customer support tickets coming in, questions, um, because he was able to take that and learn, both the product and how to solve customer issues, uh, and just really own that part of the business, which was huge.
Uh-huh. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the decision to sell, and also the kind of profile or reasoning behind the person who bought it, not necessarily who it was or the people who bought it.
Sure. So yeah, JetBoost. First first 3 years were like very nice growth, I'll say. Um, and then the second two were much more of very slow growth, kind of a plateau. Um, and it's very hard to get out of that. I was just at a conference last week, and a person gave a talk who's an investor in something like 300 plus companies. And they said they were looking at revenue data for all these companies, and they wanted to see how many are, once they hit a plateau, are actually able to break out of that. And it was only like 10 or 15% of companies that hit a plateau were ever able to break out of it. And it's hard when and these were bootstrap businesses. And when you're bootstrapped, and a lot of the company relies on you and a small team, it's you lose that momentum, and it can become a grind. And I think JetBoost started to become a grind. We built most of the low hanging fruit, the obvious feature requests from customers, and so the problems that we were looking to solve started to become more and more one-off type stuff that I kind of, I don't know, had mostly run out of ideas of where to take things next. And uh then you start looking around and getting the itch to do other things and do new ideas. And um which I did a bit of that. So yeah, decided it was time to try and sell it. And I actually, a year before I sold it, I explored selling. So this would have been in uh summer of 2023. I talked to a couple potential buyers. I had talked to an M&A broker, got a valuation from them, and then and I was doing this while my wife was like 8 months pregnant, uh, and then we had the baby, who was our third, and realized like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to be selling this company right now. So tabled that for about a year, and then in 2024, summer of 2024, it was actually a different M&A broker. I got a cold outreach from them, and it's one of those things where like sometimes cold outreach works, and it was just the perfect timing where I responded. I was like, yeah, actually, I am interested in selling, and ended up partnering with them. And after most of the summer just talking to tons and tons of different potential buyers and negotiating and all of that. We signed an LOI in August of 24. Um, Went through due diligence up until late October, and then we closed.
What's the TLDR of the selling process? Presumably that was the first time you ever done it. I've never looked into it for a software company. Is it like laborious and hard? Is it actually fairly straightforward, or does it depend?
Yeah, I think the TLDR it's pretty brutal. Yeah, everyone I know who's gone through it said like, yeah, there's these moments where it feels like everything's falling apart. It's incredibly stressful. Um, so yeah, for us it was like JetBoost was a challenging business to sell because every single potential buyer brought up, what about the platform risk? And you do your best to craft the story as to, and it's not BS, like it's true. Like the story I told, I believe that, based on every one that I've talked to at Webflow, the relationship that I've built over time, like I don't really see this as having a lot of risk of cannibalization by the platform, but they may change directions tomorrow, and you can never say never. uh, so that was a big sticking point for buyers, and then the fact that it was a very small team, and I was still the main. I mean, I was the only um, technical person still responsible for maintaining, the code, the infrastructure, and I wanted to move on. So there was a bit of like key person risk there for a potential buyer. Um, so that made it
Yeah, and
difficult
how
to
does that
sell.
handover go? Like, sorry to interrupt. Like, how does that handover work now? Like, you're still involved a little bit, am I right? And like, how are you slowly extricating yourself from that? Is there like now a person who's the main holder of that? Is that organized by the buyer? Like, yeah, or did you have to handle that?
Yeah, it's one of those things that has to be negotiated up front, and every buyer had a bit of a different idea or take on what they were going to do. So um, one set of buyers that we talked to was a number of different Webflow agencies. So some of the larger enterprise agencies that might want a tool like JetBoost as part of their offering. The challenge a lot of those types of buyers had was they didn't necessarily have someone with the right skill set to take over the software development and maintenance of the product. So for them, they were looking at that as a pretty big cost that they were going to have to take on to hire somebody to fit that role, and that caused them to essentially lower the valuation of the business from their perspective. Ultimately, we ended up selling to an individual who has an extremely technical background, former Google engineer, Apple engineer, very like rich and storied career in tech, and he was looking for a SaaS very similar to JetBoost, something that was technical that he could use his skills to expand the product and um, take over and run it. So yeah, we found someone who was the perfect fit that could kind of slide into my role essentially, and that allowed me to uh, start to transition things much more quickly. So the deal we worked out was I basically the first month was working side by side with him to do all the knowledge transfer and all the accounts and everything, and then uh, basically for the next 6 months after that be available for calls or to answer emails and questions for a limited number of hours a month. The transition's been surprisingly smooth to me. He's really just like taken it and run with it. I think having someone who wants to, I got kind of lucky in the fact that like he just wants to figure things out himself and hasn't needed as much hand holding as I might have anticipated. So yeah, that's been great.
Sounds like kind of an ideal buyer, really,
Yeah.
in some ways. Yeah. Do you have any sense of his vision for JetBoost, like going forward?
Yeah,
Maybe you can't say. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Probably not specifics, but I know that he's doing a lot of things right. Where um, him and the team that they are like proactively reaching out to customers, trying to learn, okay, what do you like about JetBoost? Where can we help more? I've noticed when I've been in the product lately, just to help out or whatever, seeing like, oh, here's a little, widget popping up saying like, hey, give us feedback. So a lot of that I was very good about in the early days of JetBoost. So, sending out emails and um, having live chat available on the website, all of the things to try to talk to as many customers as possible, get as much feedback as possible. And at some point, that started to shift where it was number one, starting to become overwhelming as the customer base grew. And, number two, I was just kind of, once you start hearing the same things over and over again, it starts to become less valuable. So, for me, and wanting just some personal time back, I started to pull back from soliciting so much feedback. And I think the fact that he's, new to this business, new to Webflow, um, that he is actively encouraging all of that feedback, I think is a great sign for the business going forward.
Offline, you mentioned to me just about like what a journey it's been over the last whatever 5 years or something, and we'll get to that. But like having 3 kids, getting
Hmm.
married, like but when you started JetBoost, you had all the time in the world. It's a very very
Yeah,
different thing to manage
yeah,
now.
totally.
So, but I'll ask you about that. But before that, let's set the stage for that. I want to go back to the beginning. We can leave JetBoost now. I'm just interested in your background and history. Like you studied computer science, presumably. Um, what's your kind of earliest memory of computers and kind of one of the places where you remember being most sort of inspired or like where your interest was sparked the most when you were little? Like what set the stage for this career in software development?
Yeah. Definitely always like growing up, making things, building things. Um, the thing that led me down the path of software development and programming was in high school getting a graphing calculator for math class and learning that, oh, you can like write programs on this. And this is, we're talking like, I don't know, 2001. So internet still kind of in its infancy. I didn't know anyone that was a software developer. I didn't know anyone that built websites, and there wasn't really a way to, I don't know. Like I looking back at it, I'm not even totally sure how I learned how to write code on the graphing calculator, but I just remember you could like look at other programs code on there, and that was kind of how I learned. So basically like sitting in class, playing on the graphing calculator and trying to make little games, was how I got started. And I was obsessed. Like I immediately was like, this is what I want to do. And, I ended up taking a intro to C++ programming class, senior year of high school. I think it was pretty brand new at the time. And again, we made little games and stuff, and it was just like, oh, this is so much fun. So that's how I knew going into college, like computer science, that's what I want to do, and um, figure it out from there.
What was your CS degree like? Was it like, do you remember it fondly? Were there great things about it? Were there bad things about it? Um, is there anything? Did it really lay foundations, or did you kind of learn it later on the on the fly?
Yeah, there were some great things, like just learning to program uh, and and how things worked was great. I think, yeah, I have a lot of I don't know, misgivings about the curriculum because it was very theoretical, and you know it, so I took a databases class, which was optional. Like I just happened to think like, okay, databases sounds kind of interesting. I'll take this. And now like I to me it's insane that that class was optional. Like that's like such a fundamental skill you need to do. You need a database for any type of product that you're ever going to build today. Um, so yeah, it was very like we learn about compilers and uh, machine code and very like low level stuff that um, and I'm sure it's changed today. This was again 20 years ago at this point. But coming out of that, it was really like my first job where I started to learn professional software development, both just from like a process standpoint, but also even some of the key skills, web development stuff that wasn't in the computer science curriculum at all.
So if you had kind of like to give someone a kind of curriculum, maybe like a 6 month curriculum, and they were just starting today to learn computer science and to become a software developer, do you have any reflections on like what you would do, like what you would set them up doing for those 6 months, or at least how they would get started?
Yeah, I think the most helpful way to learn is to have a project that you want to build. Um, I think it's good to start with some tutorials and whatnot to get the basics, but you need to pretty quickly get out of that because I found with tutorials it can feel like you're learning because you're taking what they wrote and then you're writing it and then you're running it and you're seeing it happen. Um, but I think you need to quickly get away from that hand holding and just, okay, I have this project that I'm intrinsically motivated that I want to build, and you're going to hit roadblocks like every step of the way. And then, back in the day it was Google and Stack Overflow. Now it's, ask ChatGPT, um, hey, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. Like, how would you go about this, or what solutions should I consider? And yeah, I think, I mean, we can get into the AI tools, but I think today with these tools, like you can learn so much faster. Um, Part of this is a tangent, but uh, part of the exploration I did as I was starting to consider selling JetBoost was getting back into game development. So, like I said, that's how I started programming, and I started to wonder, okay, I built this product, I built this company. It's like fulfilling in some ways, but not all the ways that I was maybe expecting. Maybe it's I need to go back to game development. That was, my first love of programming. So I started, you know, downloaded Unity, started learning it again with ChatGPT and the other AI tools. It was just I felt like, wow, I'm actually learning this like pretty quickly. Um, I ended up partnering with a friend of mine who was building a commercial game uh, for Steam, which is like the PC app store. Uh, and we launched that 2 weeks after the JetBoost sale closed. It's called Nightstones if you want to check it out on Steam. And to be fair, like he'd worked on this for 2 years. He was the primary game developer. I came in and helped with some of the underlying systems, some of the marketing, some of the positioning. I did build a UI, which I was proud of. That was the easiest transition coming from web development. But yeah, quickly learned how hard the game industry is, and while it did decent sales for a first game launch on Steam, it was nowhere near enough to recoup like his 2 years of investment, my 6 months. So yeah, that was I sort of had this vision of, okay, I'm going to sell this company and then I'm going to roll into this like game studio with my buddy and we're just going to do this next. And I found out, it didn't quite work out that way, but at least I tried it and now I know, okay, this is not the path that I want to
You
go down
scratch
next.
that itch, and
Yeah,
who knows,
exactly.
maybe you'll return to it. But I guess the question underneath all of this is like, from a purely kind of like, well, actually no, from an activity point of view, but like, yeah, from what you have built, what has been most fulfilling? Like, what aspect of building software is fulfilling to you? And you had work before you did JetBoost, where you worked in companies. I imagine there were parts of that were not your thing. I imagine there were parts of the game development and even JetBoost that weren't your thing. Like, where are you most fulfilled, and where do you think your kind of genius in a humble way is?
Yeah. I think what I find most fulfilling is solving real problems for people. I think that kind of or it kind of took me by surprise with JetBoost. So originally, I was building something to help out my friend. I thought it'd be cool if other people could use this, but I didn't necessarily see it as this, I don't know, burning problem that needed to be solved when I started. It was only after getting into it where, you start getting feedback from customers who are like, oh my God, this is amazing. This, you know, I have this client who is like adamant that I have this certain feature, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. But then I found JetBoost, and I was able to, make them so happy, and they're happy with me. And I saved all this time. Like hearing those stories really made me feel like, okay, what I'm doing matters, um, and is motivating to, find, again, customers coming in and saying, I have this other problem. Do you think you'd be able to solve this? And if it was something that I felt like would fit well with JetBoost and we could solve, like that to me was the most fulfilling.
Right. Yeah, totally. And another angle on the same question would be like if you had like a month off to play with any kind of like technology or technique or like project, and there was no way that you could earn money from it or that it could go on beyond that month, what would it be? Any ideas?
That's a good question because I'm trying to figure that out right now. um, yeah, I
But
think
aren't you trying to figure out where you're going? This is a special month where you can do only one thing and you can never kind of like use what you build there. I'm just interested with where your passion lies. That's all.
yeah, yeah,
Or maybe that is what you're doing. Maybe you are having a month out. I don't know.
yeah, I'm trying to force myself to have a month like that. So,
Oh, cool. Nice. I didn't know that. Right. Okay. So it's a
y-
really relevant question.
yeah, no, it is. That's why I took a pause. So
Nice.
I think one of the challenges post selling a business is you've first of all you've been driving towards something for, in my case, 5 years of the singular focus of this is what I do day to day. These are the people I'm helping. You feel like you're providing value, and then all of a sudden, like that's gone, and it's kind of hard to talk about because on the one hand, people are like, well, you know, you sold your business, presumably like you made some money from it, like you shouldn't really feel bad. But at the same time, and it was your decision, like it was my decision to sell. But at the same time, you do have to answer that question of what am I going to do next? And I think what a lot of people who are founders and are, goal oriented and motivated, like you really, it's hard to have, like you described, this month of I'm just gonna do whatever for fun or to explore, and so I've fallen into trying to, okay, what's the next business? What am I doing next? I need to figure that out as soon as possible. And most of the advice I've seen and from talking to people is like, you need to wait a minimum 6 months before starting another business. It's probably going to be a year uh, before you're actually in the right position to do that. Um,
Purely from
so
a kind of like personal alignment point of view. Is that what they're referring to?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me,
Really
it's been
interesting.
5 months of, okay, I'm gonna try to slow down and some of that was transition stuff, but some of it's been like, okay, trying to start a new project, new business. No, okay, this is not it, or I'm not ready. Uh, and so I'm just now getting to the point where I'm trying to drop all of that and just, and this is why your question is so great, timing wise, is figure out what can I just do to just play around, to have no expectations, to have um, no commitment, no, this has to be something that I do for the next year. Uh, Honestly, I probably haven't answered that yet, uh, but it is something that is very top of mind for me right now.
What experiments have you been running? Or if you don't want to talk about it, I know this is like a very embryonic phase that can be just like quite personal, but any
Yeah,
reflections you have on it so far?
I mean, definitely, it's a crazy time right now with all the changes with AI, and it's kind of it's a weird time to be back in the. It's both weird and feels like there's a lot of opportunity. Like a lot is changing, uh, so trying to figure out what aligns with my skill set. Like I'm primarily more of a bootstrapper. I don't see myself going out and raising tons of VC and trying to build the next giant AI business. It's more something like a JetBoost, maybe not so much platform dependency, but trying to solve a problem for a specific set of people. And I think the possibilities that AI has opened up to certain types of businesses that weren't possible before. So I have a friend who is doing a business where they use AI voice um, to provide an answering service for like home services companies. So your plumbers, your roofers, landscapers who need to be able to answer the phone as often as possible because it could be a new lead, it could be a new job, but also they're going out and doing the work as well, so they're not always able to answer the phone. Um, Previously, the options were either hire somebody to do that or use essentially like a smart voicemail or whatever. It's like now you can actually have an AI service that someone can talk to that feels almost real, and can take down the details of the job that they're looking for, or their appointment times or whatever. So I think for me, yeah, it's embryonic right now, and it's just trying to see what are the opportunities, what fits my skill set, my vision for the next company, and uh, again, here I go, like talking about the next company, but yeah, trying to, um, I don't know, figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I appreciate that you're in a really like liminal, if that's the right word, middle state between things right now. It's really interesting. Hopefully I can chat to you in a year or so and see where everything's at. Um, so yeah, just sort of moving to wrapping up, I wanted to ask like on a more personal level. I know you like the last 5 years has been a lot, like with 3 kids, getting married, building, selling a business. Do you have any kind of reflections on your own like growth there, or any like big lessons? Because that's a lot to fit in 5 years. Um, a lot of change. Um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's the last 5 years have, I mean, yeah, been a lot of change. It's certainly been quite the roller coaster ride. But most of it's been all good things. So started JetBoost end of 2019. I went full time on it in March of 2020. Got married in March of 2020. Pandemic hit in March of 2020. So it was all of that, and then we pretty quickly had, next year we had our first kid, and two after that. Um, so it was like learning to run a business, learning to grow a business, learning to be a dad, learning to be a husband. All of that was different challenges at different times, and the same time, and uh, but I think good things. I think it was being able to take areas of one part of my life and see how it connects with other parts. So, for example, when my first son was born, at that time it was still just me on the business, and I realized, okay, I need to figure out hiring because I can't just spend 24/7 on this business now. I can't do everything. So that helped me level up as a business owner, and working with employees and working with contractors. At the same time, as I started to manage more of a team, like was able to bring some of that skill, um, as a parent with multiple kids, and being kind of, I would say the skill goes both way, of like, as I've become a better parent, I've become a better manager, a better leader, and vice versa. So I just I think while losing some of the time that I had available, um, it's also just made, like, my life has become more complete. Uh, you know, Trying to build something, not just for myself, not just for customers, but for my family, and what this means for us going forward. Like, all of that matters more now. And again, like, even though I'm in this weird transition phase of trying to figure things out, it's also like I'm able to be more present with my family at the moment because I don't have a business that's, you know, on fire at any random moment, or customer complaints coming in or whatever. Like I've been able to de-stress for a while, and that's been great for family life and being able to spend more time and do all of that. I wouldn't trade that for anything. So, uh, yeah, just, I don't know. It's been a lot, but it's all been great. So I have no complaints.
Yeah, I mean, for me, starting a family has definitely been a forcing function for a lot of things and a lot of
Hmm.
growth. And like, even it being hard, I'm like, I respect and enjoy. I respect myself and I enjoy my life, and I feel I'm a lot more like a hell of a lot more focused and creative now.
Hmm.
Um, that it's an interesting time to go through.
Yeah.
Um, so it sounds like, yeah, you're still in a period, a lot of thinking to do going forward, but obviously there's this beautiful thing that you have right now, which is some time for your family, with your family, to be present with them, and a nice luxury in some ways to think about, like, what is next, So thanks, Chris, so much for coming on. Been really interesting. And yeah, like I said, I'd love to catch up with you in a year or so and see where everything's at, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Be a nice,
Yeah. That'd be
nice circle
awesome.
to close.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.